Olivia Reed had mastered the art of invisibility. Between the towering bookshelves of Willow Creek's public library, she moved with quiet efficiency, finding comfort in the whispered conversations and the smell of aging paper. 32. She'd built a safe, predictable life morning tea. Organizing the reference section, helping elderly Mrs. Peterson find her mystery novels every Tuesday. What nobody saw behind her gentle smile was the pain, the abdominal condition she'd ignored. 4 months had finally demanded attention when she collapsed in the biography section last week. "The specialist will see you now," the nurse called, her voice echoing in the pristine waiting room of the Blackwood Medical Center. Olivia clutched her worn leather satchel closer, fingers trembling slightly as she followed the nurse down the corridor. The medical file tucked under her arm held her entire medical history, including the uncomfortable fact that she'd waited far too long to seek help. "Miss Reed, I'm Dr. James Blackwood." The voice was warm, resonant, nothing like the clinical tone she'd expected. Olivia looked up and momentarily forgot the rehearsed explanation for her delayed treatment. Dr. Blackwood wasn't just handsome. He radiated a quiet confidence that filled the room. Dark eyes that somehow managed to be both professional and kind studied her with interest. "Please, sit down." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "I've reviewed your file, but I'd like to hear from you about these symptoms," Olivia found. Her voice, though it came out softer than intended, started about 8 months ago. Just mild discomfort at first. "Thought it would pass. And now?" he asked, his attention unwavering. "And now it's constant," she admitted. "The local doctor thinks it might require surgery." Dr. Blackwood nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Based on these results, I agree. It's a relatively straightforward procedure, but we shouldn't delay further." As he explained the laparoscope surgery, Olivia noticed details as perfectly tailored. Suit beneath the white coat, the subtle platinum watch on his wrist. The fountain pen that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Do you have any questions for me, Miss Reed?" "Just one," she said, surprising herself with her directness. "Why is someone like you working at a small-town hospital?" Smile transformed his face, softening the professional demeanor. "Someone like me, I mean? Everyone knows the Blackwoods own half the state." "Ah," he nodded, leaning back slightly. "Well, healing people is more satisfying than counting money, though I admit the family isn't entirely pleased with my career choice." The first time that day, Olivia smiled genuinely. "That makes 2 of us with disappointed families. My parents wanted a lawyer, not a librarian." Something shifted between them, a moment of unexpected connection. As they scheduled her surgery for the following week, Olivia felt a strange lightness despite the diagnosis. Perhaps it was the relief of finally addressing her health, or perhaps it was the way Dr. Blackwood looked at her, or like she was perfectly visible after all. The antiseptic scent of hospital corridors no longer frightened Olivia as she was prepped for surgery. 3 days had passed since her consultation with Dr. Blackwood, during which she'd received 2 personal calls from his office, checking on her pre-surgery preparations. "Nervous?" asked the anesthesiologist, adjusting the IV line. "Surprisingly less than I expected," Olivia replied honestly. "That's the Blackwood effect," the nurse beside her said with a knowing smile. "He has a way of making patients feel like they're the only case that matters." Before Olivia could respond, Dr. Blackwood entered, his surgical cap already in place. "Good morning, Miss Reed. Ready for your fresh start?" His confidence was contagious. As the anesthesia began to take effect, the last thing she remembered was his reassuring voice saying, "I'll take good care of you, Olivia." When she awoke, groggy and disoriented, the first thing she noticed was a small bouquet of purple hyacinths on her bedside table. The second was Dr. Blackwood reviewing her chart. "Welcome back," he said, noticing her stirring. Everything went perfectly. Over the next 2 days of recovery, Olivia discovered something unusual about her doctor. Unlike the brief, efficient visits she'd expected, Dr. Blackwood spent time with her, explaining her recovery process in detail, asking about her work at the library, even bringing her a historical novel when he learned of her interest in the genre. "This one's my favorite," he'd said, placing the leather-bound book on her tray. "The protagonist reminds me of you, quiet on the surface but remarkably strong underneath." By the time of her discharge, something had shifted. Olivia found herself speaking more freely around him, sharing stories about peculiar library patrons and her collection of first editions. "You're looking much better, Dr. Blackwood," James, as he'd asked her to call him during their conversations, remarked as he signed her release forms. "The color has returned to your face. Thanks to your care," she replied, gathering her belongings. "I never expected such attention." James hesitated, then said, "I have a confession, Olivia. Recognized your name when your case came across my desk. I checked out the Count of Monte Cristo from your library last month. You recommended some additional reading that completely changed my perspective on the book." Olivia blinked in surprise. "That was you? You didn't introduce yourself. Would you have treated me the same if you'd known I was a Blackwood?" he asked with gentle humor. She considered this. "Probably not," she admitted. "I might have recommended something pretentious instead." His laugh echoed in the small hospital room. "And that's exactly why I didn't say anything. You saw me as just another reader." As the nurse arrived with a wheelchair for hospital protocol, James handed Olivia his card. "For any post-surgical questions," he explained, though something in his eyes suggested he hoped she might call for other reasons too. Leaving the hospital, Olivia realized the surgery had removed more than just her physical ailments. Some invisible barrier around her heart had begun to crumble as well. 2 weeks after her surgery, Olivia was reshelving books in the library's poetry section when Mrs. Wilson, the head librarian, approached with an unusually bright smile. "There's someone asking for you at the main desk," she said, her voice lifting with curiosity. "Quite handsome, too." Olivia's heart quickened as she rounded the corner and saw James standing there, dressed in charcoal slacks and a blue sweater that made him look more like a university professor than a surgeon. Without his white coat, the wealthy air was even more apparent in his bearing. Drawing curious glances from the library patrons, "Dr. Blackwood," she said, surprised, "is everything all right?" "James, please," he reminded her with a warm smile. "And yes, everything's fine. I was hoping to check on my favorite patient and perhaps get another book recommendation." They moved to the quieter reference section, where Olivia's desk sat nestled between ancient encyclopedias. "You could have called," she pointed out, though. She couldn't hide her pleasure at seeing him. "Some things are better done in person," he replied, running his fingers along the spines of nearby books. "Besides, I wanted to see your domain. You've seen mine." Over the next hour, they talked books and healing, their conversation flowing with surprising ease. When Olivia mentioned a local author's reading happening that evening, James asked if he might join her. "It's not exactly the opera, or whatever grand events you must attend," she warned. "That's precisely why it sounds perfect," he countered. The poetry reading at the rustic coffee shop became dinner at the small Italian restaurant down the street, where James confessed his fatigue with the social obligations that came with his family name. "Most people either want something from me or have already decided who I am," he explained, twirling pasta on his fork. "You're refreshingly different, Olivia. You look at me and just see me. That's because you're easier to see than you think," she replied softly. Their evening ended with a walk through the town square, autumn leaves crunching beneath their feet. When James reached for her hand, Olivia didn't pull away. "I have a follow-up appointment on Tuesday," she said as they approached her apartment building. "I know," he smiled. "I made sure it was with me." The next 3 weeks brought a gradual intertwining of their lives. James attended the library's children's reading hour where Olivia volunteered. She accompanied him to a medical charity event where he steadied her nerves among the wealthy attendees. They discovered shared loves classical music, historical documentaries, and walking in the rain. "My brother thinks I've lost my mind," James admitted one evening as they sat on a park bench, sharing ice cream, despite the cooling weather. "He says I'm neglecting my social responsibilities by spending time with you." "And have you?" Olivia asked, suddenly conscious of the worlds that separated them. James turned to face her fully. "Olivia, I've spent years fulfilling expectations. With you, I'm finally living according to my own heart." Hesitated before adding, "I hope that doesn't scare you." She considered his question seriously. "What scares me is how quickly you've become important to me," she confessed. "I'm not used to being seen this way." His fingers gently traced her cheek. "Then we're both navigating new territory," he whispered before leaning in to kiss her for the first time a moment that felt like the beginning of a chapter neither had expected to write. The first photograph appeared in the local newspaper's society section 3 months into their relationship. Blackwood heir slumming it at town festival with unknown librarian. The caption stung, but Olivia tried to laugh it off as she and James shared breakfast at her modest apartment. They could have at least called me a bookish beauty or something equally cliché. She joked, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. James crumpled the paper. I'm sorry. I didn't think they'd bother with small-town events. It's fine, she assured him, but the seed of doubt had been planted. That evening, attending a fundraiser at the Blackwood estate, Olivia felt the weight of curious stares and whispered comments. In her simple black dress, the nicest she owned, she stood out among designer gowns like a sparrow among peacocks. So you're the librarian who's captured our James, a woman who introduced herself as his aunt remarked, her smile not reaching her eyes. How ... novel. Later at the bar, she overheard 2 women talking. Obviously, it's just his Florence Nightingale phase. He'll tire of playing savior once the novelty wears off. James found her on the terrace, arms wrapped around herself despite the mild evening. There you are. Been looking everywhere. Your world is very different from mine, Olivia said quietly. That's what I love about us, he countered, taking her hands. We're building something that belongs to neither world, but entirely to us. But the scrutiny intensified. Anonymous gifts appeared at the library, expensive clothing catalogs, brochures for elocution classes, even a business card for a plastic surgeon with a note, if you want to keep him. Olivia said nothing to James, not wanting to appear petty or insecure. Instead, she began to withdraw, creating distance with claims of work commitments and fatigue from her recent medical issues. The breaking point came when Gerald Blackwood, James's father, requested a private meeting with Olivia. At his downtown office, the elder Blackwood was polite but direct. My son has responsibilities to this family and our businesses, he explained, his voice measured. His position requires certain compatible partnerships. Surely you can understand that someone of your background might find these obligations challenging. I understand perfectly, Olivia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. You think I'm not good enough for your son? On the contrary, Miss Reed, you seem like a lovely young woman. But loving James means wanting what's best for him. His talents are meant for bigger stages than this small town can offer. That night, when James arrived at her apartment with takeout and excited plans for a weekend trip, Olivia couldn't maintain the facade. Your father thinks I'm holding you back, she said, the words tumbling out before he'd even removed his coat. James stiffened. You spoke to my father. He asked to meet me, she explained, watching comprehension and then anger cross his face. Whatever. He said what everyone's thinking, Olivia interrupted. That I don't fit in your world, and eventually you'll realize that too. That's not for anyone else to decide, James insisted, reaching for her. But Olivia stepped back. They're right. I've been kidding myself thinking this could work. You deserve someone who enhances your life, not complicates it. You're not listening, James said, frustration edging his voice. I don't want what they want for me. But what if someday you do? She whispered. I need time to think, James. Please, he left reluctantly, promising to call the next day. But when he did, Olivia didn't answer, nor the day after that. She returned to her quiet routine at the library, ignoring the concerned glances from coworkers who had grown accustomed to seeing the handsome doctor visit at night. Alone with her thoughts, Olivia wondered if she'd made the right choice or simply surrendered to her deepest fears that she wasn't enough. That happiness this complete couldn't possibly be meant for someone like her. For 2 weeks, Olivia moved through her days mechanically, finding no joy in the books that had once been her refuge. The pain of missing James felt suspiciously like her old medical conditioner. Constant aches she tried to ignore until it became unbearable. At the library, she was shelving medical journals when Mrs. Wilson approached with an envelope. Special delivery, the older woman said, her eyes twinkling with conspiracy. Inside was a library card, not from their branch, but from the medical library at Blackwood Hospital. Attached was a note in James's distinctive handwriting. Some stories deserve a different ending. Research section, 7 p.m. Despite her reservations, Olivia found herself walking through the hospital's quiet corridors that evening. The medical library was deserted except for a single lamp illuminating a table where a book lay open. It was her own medical file. And beside it, James's resignation letter from the hospital board. "I'm not giving up my medical practice." His voice came from behind her, stepping down from hospital administration to focus on opening a clinic in town, one that treats everyone, regardless of means. Olivia turned, her heart pounding. "You shouldn't make career decisions because of me." "I'm not," James said, approaching slowly. "I'm making them because of who I am when I'm with you, the person I want to be." He looked tired but determined. "These past 2 weeks showed me something important, Olivia. My life has all the trappings of success, but feels hollow without you. In it, your family has their own lives to live," he finished firmly. "As do I." He reached for her hands. "I visited your father." Olivia blinked in surprise. "My father? Why?" "To understand where you came from. To meet the man who raised someone with such quiet strength." James smiled. "He showed me your childhood bookshelf. Told me how you'd read to your mother during her illness, how books became your connection to her after she passed." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "He never talks about that time. He told me something else," James continued. He said, "My daughter hides because she's afraid of loss, not because she's afraid of living." Olivia's breath caught. "That sounds like him." "The question isn't whether you belong in my world or I in yours," James said gently. "It's whether we're brave enough to build our own." From his pocket, he withdrew a small, worn book, a first edition of Persuasion by Jane Austen. "Your favorite?" she whispered. "A story about a woman who gets a second chance at love when she finds the courage to defy expectations." He nodded. "I've marked a passage." Olivia opened to the ribbon marker and read aloud. "You pierce my soul. I am half agony, half hope. ... I have loved none but you." When she looked up, James had moved closer. "I'm not asking you to fit into some predetermined mold, Olivia. I'm asking if you'll help me break it all together. People will talk," she warned, though her resolve was weakening. "Let them," he shrugged. "They'll eventually find something more interesting to discuss. Your father will come around, or he won't. That's his journey, not ours." The simplicity of his perspective pierced through her fears. All this time, she'd been the one placing barriers between them, not the other way around. "I'm sorry I pushed you away," she said finally. "I'm sorry I didn't fight harder," he replied. "But I'm fighting now." In the quiet of the medical library, surrounded by books containing countless human conditions, Olivia made her choice. She stepped forward into James's waiting arms, no longer the shy patient or the insecure librarian, but a woman embracing. Her own story won, where courage, not fear, turned the pages. "Yes," she whispered against his chest. "Let's write our own story." Their kiss sealed a promise that neither wealth nor status, neither past nor fear, would determine their future only. The courage they found in each other's hearts,